I read about a minister in America who went to a large church and he felt that he had to impress his parishioners. So he had all of his weighty tomes, which are good, on his shelves. And after a while, he just felt God nudging him, saying, you need to be yourself. And so he got all of his Star Trek videos and books, and he put those on one of his shelves. So when people came in, they went, "You a Trekkie?" He went, yeah, I am. Because he thought, actually, that is part of who I am. If you were to come into my study, you're welcome after COVID is done and dusted. You will see the centrepiece is a bookcase that has all of my shark memorabilia on it. In fact, many of you have added to that and given me things that have meant a lot. I was going to bring all my books in here today, but my back wouldn't afford me the time to do it because they're so heavy. But you'll see here, this is a photo of all of my shark films that I've got at home. I was so excited. I went to Tesco last week to buy some steak for Joe and I went down the DVD aisle and they had another shark film there about villagers in America who were being attacked by a shark. It's an interesting and original storyline, I'm sure you will agree. Sharks, I love them. They are in the waters in which we swim, the waters in which we fish, the waters in which some disgruntled, disappointed fishermen, disciples decide to go back and fish in because Jesus has died and they're not quite sure if he's going to be back the way they would want him to be. We fear sharks. We fear sharks perhaps more than any other non-human creature on the planet. They rise from the depths and kill us. They make rather a point of killing us while we're enjoying ourselves on holiday, and that makes things even worse. They stand for the motiveless malevolence of the non-human world. They don't destroy us because they want to or because they need to. They destroy us just because they can. Their mindlessness is part of the threat. Brute engines of destruction, says Simon Barnes in the History of the World of 100 Animals. Actually, if you strip it back, sharks kill on average 8 people a year, and I know that's tragic for each of those 8 families that have experienced that. We kill 100 million sharks a year. So you kind of put it into perspective, and we are in their territory. But there is a fear about them, isn't there? And when we're fearful, we want to be somewhere that's comfy and familiar, don't we? How often have I, in this pandemic, when we felt fearful, when we thought, when is this going to end, gone to something of comfort? And the disciples, they're fearful because this is the 3rd time in this story that they've seen Jesus. So some of them have seen him twice before, and they're still not sure about what's going on. And so they think, we're going to go for the comfy. I'm going fishing, says Simon Peter. And they say, we'll go with you. And so they go out in their boats. They know their boats. Peter was probably almost born in a boat, but he worked in a boat his whole life before being with Jesus. And maybe he's thinking at this point, stuff it. I gave 3 years of my life to Jesus and it's not gone the way I thought. So I'm going to go back to that which I'm comfortable and familiar with. I'm going to go back to that which I've got control over. Because Jesus might have been a carpenter and been better at banging nails into wood than me. He might have been a miracle worker and a preacher and better at all that than me. But he died and I'm alive and he's come back to life and I don't quite get what is going on. So I'm going to go to the thing that I am better at than him. I'm going to go back to fishing because I am at least in control in that part of my life. We like being in control, don't we? But the ironic thing is we're not. In this story, they don't catch any fish until Jesus steps in. They've got no control whatsoever. Control is an illusion that we're sold. If you're in control, then you're safe. And to do that, make sure you stay with the familiar. We've got very little control in our lives. I could drive home after this service and a great steamer boat that Gordon spoke of could come along the Shibburn Road and wipe me out. I mean, it'd be a bit weird, so maybe we'll go with a lorry instead. But we kid ourselves that we're in control. But we've all know of someone or have ourselves experienced that letter through the door from the doctor taking that loved one to the hospital just to be checked out on the safe side. That control that we kid ourselves we've got is an illusion. In Greek legend, Zeus seduced Lamia And Zeus's wife Hera killed Lamia's children in revenge. It's like something out of EastEnders. And Zeus responded by turning Lamia into a monster shark so that she could get revenge by eating the innocent children of others. Look at that little chubby boy there. Imagine that giant shark that was once a human being coming up and eating him. There's just anger in that Greek story, as there is in so many of them, and then actions go out of control. In the story that we watched together from Scripture, that night it says they caught nothing. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. They were probably cold and damp, tired. I imagine they were beginning to get irritated with Peter. Well, you're meant to be the rock, Cephas, that's what Jesus called you. You're meant to be our leader, but you're just a gobby bloke who doesn't really know what he's doing. You can't even fish, for crying out loud. Damp, cold, muscles beginning to get tight, wondering why they were out there at all. They feel discouraged. If Jesus had been here, I can imagine them saying, if he hadn't have died on that cross, if he hadn't have had all those fights with the religious leaders, then we'd still be doing all that great stuff. We'd still be feeding the 5,000, the 4,000. We'd still be hearing those brilliant stories that he said that we're trying to scribble down and remember. We'd still eat with him. We haven't seen Mary and Martha and Lazarus since then. Will we keep that friendship up? Everything has changed. In those moments in our lives where we catch nothing, where we feel spiritually void, or work is just an oppressive boss that gives us stomach cramps and anxiety before we go in each day, or our marriage we've discovered is a dry facade that we've been functioning in for years but not loving in, or our children have done what children do and grown up. In those times where we catch nothing, I think it's okay to be angry with Jesus. We can, if we're not careful, be brought up with this Christian performance where we have to say everything's okay. And actually it's far healthier when it's not, to say, actually, I'm angry. I know of a couple from my first church, and they lost a baby before birth, and I didn't know them at this stage, but they said it's all part of what God wants, it's God's plan, etc., etc. And I don't believe that's part of God's plan. It's the randomness, the fallenness of life. But at one point, 6 months later, the guy just had a complete breakdown. And he turned away from God because he'd been trying all that time to just keep a positive spin on it. When actually maybe, and I'm not judging him at all, I don't even want to begin to think about what he went through, but maybe it would have been better to have got angry with Jesus and to have said, for crying out loud, Jesus, where are you? Friends, about a third of the Psalms are lamentations. They're Psalms that are saying, God, where are you in this? God, come close to me now. God, why have you let this happen? They don't have to be theologically correct, because our emotions aren't always theologically correct, are we? I get angry with Jesus about things that I know he's got no business in being involved in, but it actually does me good to be honest with him. To say, Jesus, I feel like you're letting me down at the moment. Or Jesus, I just wonder where you are at this time. Because when we're like that with Jesus, he doesn't say, oh, whoa, hang on a minute. If you're going to be all like this, then I'll go and be worshipped by someone else. Jesus is with us in the ups and the downs of life. That night, they caught nothing. Look at this photo on the screen. This is of a guy swimming. He's just resting on his surfboard, and the crowd on the coastline, on the shoreline, have seen this shark's fin rise. You can actually watch a video of this. And they start shouting, shark, shark, shark. Look at the photo a second later when he's heard them. He's now really aware that there's a shark behind him, and you can see the fin diving as it's beginning to go for him. And then a battle ensues where this shark does attack him, but he manages to beat it off and then swim to shore. Ironically, this guy was a Navy SEAL in training. Maybe the shark thought, well, he's a SEAL of some kind, so I'll just have a little nibble on him. Sharks are everywhere, absolutely everywhere. There's a quote here on the screen. Everybody who has ever swum in the sea has swum with sharks. They're everywhere, in every sea and of every depth, up to 6,500 feet, 2,000 meters. It's the Lord, they say. Jesus is with them, even though they don't sense him there, in the same way that we're not aware of those sharks around us. You look at one of those camcorder things that fly around in the sky, the drones. How many of those are on YouTube now showing people swimming and there's a shark around them and they don't even know it? And then the drone radios down and they're told, get out of the sea, and they're like, whoa, get out. The disciples have gone back to something that's safe and familiar, that they think they've got control over. They've caught nothing. In my mind, they're probably a bit ticked off with Jesus. But Jesus is there. And he says, put the nets on the other side, and they have a miraculous catch. 153 fish. Is that a ceremonial number, a religious number? No, you just know that fishermen and fisherwomen always remember how many fish they've caught, don't they? Because they like to brag. Yeah, caught 4 trout today. Well done, we're really impressed with you. 153 fish we've caught, look at all these fish. And when they come onto the seashore, they're with Jesus. It's interesting that Peter, when he realises it's Jesus, takes off his outer garments that he had on to keep him warm, I imagine, because he was cold, dives in this water and swims to Jesus. In that moment when he has that intense encounter with him, the caught nothing, the I'm going fishing, recedes into the background. It doesn't mean those feelings and actions were invalid. Sometimes we have to go through those valleys to get to those high points. But he meets with Jesus. We have different bodies to sharks, completely different. You'll see here 2 teeth. That's on the left, a great white shark's teeth. It's about a couple of inches long. And then you'll see a megalodon tooth. That's a prehistoric shark that is the size of a bus, if not larger, similar design to a great white. They are related. But that's all we find of sharks, because they're actually made of cartilage, whereas we're made of bone, whether it's Alan's teeth that he puts in the glass jar on the side of the bed at night, or Kay's wooden leg that she takes off and wishes she had a bone one. All of those kind of things. We're different to sharks. And the disciples are different to Jesus. I wonder if that's why they're not quite sure what's going on, why they're, even when they get to the shore, reticent about asking Jesus who he is. Because he has come back, he has risen from the dead, but in some way, shape or form, he has changed. They bring the fish to the shore. Jesus has got some fish of his own that he's already cooking. I kind of find that ironic, really. I'm better at fishing than him, Peter probably thought. And yet here is Jesus. He's caught some fish, not bought it at Waitrose, and he's cooking it for them. A good carpenter, great saviour, and not that bad at fishing, if truth be told, either. What I love about this passage is that Jesus says to them, as he's already cooking them breakfast, bring some of your fish. Bring some of your fish and we'll add it to the meal that I'm making. Me, Jesus? Me, after I went back to that which was safe and predictable and comfy, that I thought I had control over? Me, Jesus, after I got the hump with you and told you to stuff it? Me, Jesus, after I jumped in the water because I respond when you do great things? Me? Yeah, you. And me. Yeah, and you, yes, you, sitting there on your couch now who thinks, but I have really screwed up with God this week. You. And you. Many of you have said to me in confidence that your faith, your relationship with Jesus has taken a real battering over this pandemic period. And Jesus says to you, can you bring some of your fish as well? I'd like to use that, because that one you've caught there is great. And the ironic thing, friends, as I think about it now, is that even Jesus caught those fish. So the fish that he asked them to bring are actually fish that he'd got them to catch when he asked them to put the net on the other side of the boat. Jesus asks us to bring our fish. I had the really sad privilege of doing my father-in-law's funeral committal service on Monday of this last week. And I want to thank you for the prayers, the cards, the letters, the food, the lovely ways that you have supported us as a family. And afterwards we had a celebration of Derek's life service at the last church he served at. And as we were sat there and listening to a song being sung with our masks on our faces and tears down my cheeks, I said to Jesus in my prayers, Jesus, I feel a bit lost with you at the moment. I've not lost my faith. I've not turned my back on God. I'm just a bit cheesed off with the role of events over the last couple of years in our family. I don't want to be the oldest man in my family. I want my children to have granddads, grandpas, and they haven't. So I'm just a bit lost with you at the moment, Jesus. And Jesus still says to me, can you bring some of your fish? And in him saying to me, can you bring some of your fish? It feels like he's saying, it's okay. I understand that you feel like that. Because I wept over Jerusalem when they turned their back on me. I wept at the tomb of Lazarus when people didn't understand the bigger picture. I was fed up with my disciples when they didn't understand my parables. But I never left them. And I still love them. And I know, Neil, that you love me as well. And Jesus, I do. And I know we'll be close again. And I know that you will forgive me for all the things I've done wrong. That you have forgiven me for all the things I've done wrong. And so that barrier is not there. It feels good, actually, just to say it. To say those things. And maybe you need to as well. Maybe you need to pick up the phone to someone or say to a loved one that you're sat on the couch with now, I don't feel as close to God as I did. Can you help me? Can you guide me? And in me sharing that with you, I'm not sharing it so that I can become your pet project and you can send me lots of helpful Bible verses, that kind of thing. I just want to model this passage, really, and be honest with you. Because it would have been fake of me to sit here and pretend that I've got it all together, which I jolly well haven't. But I know Jesus died on the cross for me. I know that I'm forgiven. And I know that when I breathe my last here, after I've given all my fish to Jesus to use, that I will see my father-in-law and I will see my dad in the heavenly realms.